Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1129B, and today's date is November 16th, 2016, and the title of the episode is Obama Warns That Populist Uprising Could Trigger a World War. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, on the corporate media, throughout the U.S. government, many people, I hear them saying that we need to get rid of the Electoral College, that we need to go with the popular vote. That's the way to go. George Soros, he's using petitions, he's pushing the idea, and we can see that they're really pushing this, saying that this is unconstitutional, we shouldn't have this. Actually, it's in the Constitution. And I don't think people understand what the Electoral College is, and this is actually a safety feature that the Founding Fathers put into the Constitution for our elections, because they studied history. They understood how it could be manipulated, how people can change results, and how they can create a fantasy world where their candidate always wins. Now, I know many people say that Democrat, Republican, it's all the same. I do believe that. I do believe it's all part of the same scheme, the same scam that they're playing on the American people. But everyone has their own views of what is happening here. But Senator Barbara Boxer, she launched a bill to abolish the Electoral College. But we need to understand that the president and vice president, they are not elected by the popular vote, which we can see that is true. They are chosen by 538 electors, which is spelled out in the Constitution. Now, why did the founders create the Electoral College? And why do we still need it today? Well, they're telling us we don't need it. It's obsolete. We don't need it. Actually, they're using the same argument that they use for the Second Amendment. Well, that amendment is obsolete anymore. We don't need it because, you don't need a weapon now to hunt. Well, the Second Amendment had nothing to do with hunting. It had to do with protecting the people against a tyrannical government and keeping the people in power of that government. So the founders right now, they knew that they couldn't have the majority vote for a candidate. They couldn't have a democracy, because we're really not in a pure democracy. We're more of a republic. They knew this from studying history, that pure democracies, they do not work, they implode. For example, a democracy is like having two wolves and a lamb voting on what's for dinner. You can see how that's going to work out. It's not going to work out very well. And they knew that if they had the popular vote deciding who's going to be president, candidates, the parties, could just go to the bigger cities like New York, out in Texas, and concentrate just in those areas. And they wouldn't even look at the rest of the country. So they might go to, LA, they might go to Dallas, Houston, they might go to New York City, and, the big Boston, the big cities, and just concentrate on those areas. And the rest of the states, who really cares? People aren't really living in there. They have no say. And all they'd have to do is concentrate in that area. Well, they didn't want that to happen. They wanted the country to have a say. The other reason they did this is because they knew that a popular vote, well, that could be manipulated. It could be manipulated to steal the elections. Because manipulation is very easy without the Electoral College. So you can see why they're pushing so hard to get rid of the Electoral College. The Electoral College, well, it makes pretty much all the states very even. And you need to look at all the states throughout the Union and say, you know something? I care about all of them. You just can't pick out this one and that one. And yes, I know we have swing states, but swing states change rapidly over time. They're not always the same. I mean, Texas used to vote Democrat. California voted Republican in '88. And swing states always change. So we can see why they're trying to push this idea, because what they really want is control of the system. Now, I know they have certain amount of control right now because they give us these two candidates, and most of the time these two candidates are exactly the same. This time there wasn't a candidate that the corporate media, the U.S. government didn't like. And you can tell from everything that they've done, they kept on reporting against that candidate and saying that Hillary was going to win, Trump has zero chances of winning, and they went on and on and on. Now they're bashing him after the election. Now, do we know for sure that they're just not playing us? Well, we don't know because he's not in office. He hasn't done anything yet. He's just putting together his transition team, and we need to watch his actions. Now, if he gets in there and he cozies up with the banks, cozies up with the central banks, the corporations, and does everything opposite that he says, well, we know right off the bat. Guess what? He's not working for the people. He's working for the establishment, the shadow government. And this is something that we need to watch. And they're trying to make it seem that all we have to do is vote on it and we can get rid of the Electoral College. Well, the Electoral College, it's in our Constitution, which means to get rid of it requires a constitutional amendment. 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate, and the ratification of 3/4, 38 of the 50 states, which is something that's not very easy to do. Do you really think 38 of the 50 states are going to go along with this? And we're going to have 2/3 of the vote in the House and the Senate? That's an uphill battle. But they're trying to get into everyone's minds that, we can just change this by creating a bill, by just saying this, by just saying that. No, they can't. It's a lie, it's propaganda, and it's feeding the people throughout the United States. And this is really what they want. They want chaos. They want craziness here in the United States, because they understand that the more they get people angry, the more people will protest and riot, and they want more people joining in with their paid protesters, their agent provocateurs. They're trying to create an uprising. That's what they're trying to do right now. We see Twitter is purging dozens of alt-right accounts. They're just shutting them down. Now, they shut down Richard Spencer, who runs an alt-right think tank. They also shut down Tennessee professor Glenn Reynolds, and then they brought it back up. But we can see right now, they don't care. They're just going to start shutting down people. And what they do is they always start with these groups saying, the alt-right, which I think is completely made up from the propagandists who like to say, look, racist, white nationalists, anti-Semitic, and all these different terms that they use. They like to just create these huge stories out of nothing to get people all angry and all riled up, and they just want to continually talk about it over and over and over. And they never tell you the truth about anything, because that's not their whole agenda. Their whole agenda is to get people angry. Their whole agenda is to get people talking about, this person's no good. That person's no good. You see, this is where we're headed. They did this during the elections, if you remember. They do this with Russian aggression, if you remember. But when you ask for proof, when you ask for evidence, when you ask for all of that, that's when it breaks apart. Remember, the news agencies today, they're not producing facts. They're producing propaganda for the people. It's a show. And people only know about the show because this is what they've been listening to. This is all they've seen. And what we're seeing right now is a push for the establishment to try to get back what they lost. Now, we still have the shadow government. We still have the deep state. But there's certain other parties that they're sore losers. And they want what they want. And they don't care how they get it. Now, out in Kiev, we see Kiev forces, they're reinforcing their positions on Donbass. They're bringing D-30 howitzers. We're seeing tanks being deployed to the contact line. And we can see right now that in all of these areas, in Ukraine, in the Middle East, out in the South Pacific, in the South China Sea, we see that the central bank, the shadow government, they have been pushing for war for quite a while. They want a war. And they're not going to give up right now because they know they need this war to really reduce the population, create a new system, and we can see right now that they haven't given up. I know many people think they have, but they really haven't. We see that Russia, they're withdrawing from the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court. They signed the statute back in Rome in 2000, but they never ratified it. And officials are quoted as saying that the Hague-based tribunal is not truly independent and has not lived up to the hopes of the international community. By the way, the U.S. and China, they've never been members. So Russia decided we're out. We see Turkey right now. Well, they're bringing in 90 battle tanks. They deployed them to the border of Syria, and they have entered Syria. And they crossed the border lines, which is an invasion in Syria. They have invaded Syria, just like the United States, just like France, just like the UK, just like all the coalition forces. They have invaded a sovereign country. We see the Syrian military. Well, they have deployed a number of Pantsir S short to medium-range air defense systems near Aleppo. Why did they do this? Well, they understand that they're moving closer and closer to capturing the entire city of Aleppo. They're going to defend their forces from the Turkish Air Force, which is in Syria illegally bombing certain areas. We see the House right now passed 2 sanction bills. Well, they passed a 10-year extension of the Iran Sanctions Act by 419 to 1. The House also passed, by voice, a new sanction bill on anyone who provides the Syrian government with financial, material, or technology support. And that includes Russia and Iran. So we can see right now their push to get Syria and Iran, it has not stopped at all. Remember, the shadow government, the central bank, they are still fixated on their goal. They are not going to give up that easily. We see NATO officials have been making statements almost every day, hyping the need to remain hostile towards Russia. And of course, they're doing this because Trump made a call to Putin, trying to normalize ties. And of course, NATO, they went off the deep end. No, Russia's bad, and we have to continually say Russia's bad. President Obama said something very interesting. He warned the world and America about rising populism that he says is sweeping the planet, urging people to be vigilant about the future. We're going to have to guard against a rise in crude sort of nationalism or ethnic identity or tribalism that is built around us and them, Obama said during a press conference in Greece. And he's referring to World War I, World War II, as the consequence of rising sense of nationalism in Europe. He explained that many of the disruptions of the political status quo was a consequence of social media and political officials that were fueling the rise of populist anger. So we need to translate this. What he's really saying is those people who are anti-government, not going along with the establishment, this might set off civil war in certain countries, which would then give rise to world war. And we need to stop this. Everyone must just come in line with what the government wants, what the central banks want, what the shadow government wants, and everything will be fine. We'll be able to control you. We'll be able to keep order. We'll be able to tax you even more. We'll be able to propagandize you. and everything's okay. Why do it has to be us and them? Well, we don't want them in office. We don't want them controlling our lives. We don't want them doing what they're doing, telling us lies. I mean, if we go throughout history, we can see revolutions, civil wars. That's what all this was about, where people were saying, okay, it's enough already. We can't take anymore. And we are seeing signs of this already, where people, not just here in the United States, but throughout Europe, people are saying we don't want to be part of the EU anymore. We don't want to be part of the central bank. Germany had many protests saying, get the central bank out. We don't want these individuals controlling our lives, telling us what to do, spying on us. And what he's saying is, if this keeps up, well, we're going to come down hard on the people, which will then lead to a world war throughout the entire world. We already see that they're continually using propaganda to convince us that there's going to be some type of an event during the holiday season. Security officials in the U.S. are hyping up warnings that terrorists may strike the United States over the holiday season. A counterterrorism official said the Islamic State-inspired attacker is of particular concern to them because the terrorist group may seek to distract the world from their losses during battles in Syria and Iraq. They have no intelligence saying that there's going to be an attack, which they never do, because everything is done from the inside. What they're really saying is, listen, we're losing in Syria. Our paid mercenary terrorist groups are being pushed out. We have no alternative but to create an event right now to bring us to some type of war. They're still talking about this. They're still saying we're going to have some type of an event. They're still saying that the Islamic State is going to strike at any minute somewhere in the country. They're doing this because they understand they need to bring the country to war, because they're afraid that the people will figure out that they're responsible for this major collapse. Now, of course, when it does happen, most likely they're going to blame Trump. But how long is that going to last? I don't think very long. I mean, many people are going to say, whoa, wait a minute. He just got into office. How in the world did he just crash an economy that you've been telling us has been in recovery for 8 years? And he hasn't even done anything yet. That's going to be a very hard story to sell. They're going to try to sell it. Then they're going to need an event. Then they're going to need something else. And they're going to use all this to distract the people. So their agendas, their goals, they're still on track. They are not giving up. They still want this. They still want a war. They want an event. They want it to cover up the entire collapse of the system. And we can see right now, most likely, we're getting very close to that point because the economy is deteriorating so quickly now. Things are unraveling. And I'm not talking about the stock market. I'm not talking about the manipulated numbers. I'm talking about the real economic indicators that we've been following. We're seeing the same exact signs to the lead up of 2008 when everything came crashing down. Some of these economic indicators are a lot worse than they were back in 2008. Some have never recovered. A lot of them have just been manipulated to make you believe that everything is fine. But what we're seeing right now and everything that we tracked and everything that we looked at, we all understand that it's coming. We all understand that it's going to happen. And I go back to the story, back to 2008, when there were hundreds of millions of people that believed that the economy was going to do fine in 2008 because the central bank said it was contained, that real estate doesn't go down in price, that everything was fine. They're not predicting any type of recession. There were a few that said we're running into major problems. Of course, they were laughed at. They were made fun of. They kept on saying, you told us that the economic collapse was going to happen last year and the year before that. And when it did happen, all those people disappeared. They went into hiding because they were completely wrong. And all those people, they were saying it over and over and over, tracking it, looking at it, showing you they were all right. Some people made fortunes off of that. Other people lost everything they had. And the government didn't even report that it was a recession until many months later. Actually, I remember the corporate media, as the market was continually coming down throughout October, November, and December, I remember them saying that, oh, by the spring, real estate's going to bounce back, everything's going to be fine, and guess what? It was a complete lie. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.